how does trauma impact the body and nervous system? And what are some signs that past trauma is still affecting daily life?
All right. So, how does trauma affect the body and nervous system? So, trauma will, gosh, a way that another clinician stated it, which has stuck with me, is like there's the cognitive way of processing things, with our thoughts, and then there are the emotions that we feel. But there's like this third pathway for trauma, and we're not going to feel it emotionally. We're not going to be aware that it's there, but the body will hold on to it. The body will be hit by it, and it can cause issues with muscles and issues with ligaments and with just little aches and pains here and there.
Mhm.
And it can certainly affect energy
Oh,
levels.
for sure.
And it can result in the development of some chronic situations with health. And what I've noticed in my clients, I had a young woman years ago who, very fit, very healthy appearing, and I believe she was even like an active athlete, and she was complaining of this like crick in her shoulder blade, like in the back, like around the middle of her back, there was this pain and it didn't make any sense to her. And so I said, "Well, let's examine it emotionally and see if there's something there that your body's holding on to." And it's sort of a 50-50. There could be something there, there could be nothing there. And we started just having her sit with it, and a memory popped up. A memory where she was hurt by something. And so we do our work on that memory and bring it to resolution, bring it to peace, and that pain disappeared. And that, as you can see, was completely fascinating to me as a clinician,
Mhm.
still sticks with me. And when I have clients who come to me who are like, I've had this issue or that issue with my health and my doctor can't find anything, I'll say, all right, let's see if there's some emotional stuff connected to that. I'm not saying that there is, or let's see if there's some stress that's connected with that. Let's just sit with that and kind of examine it. And I would say almost every single time we have found something. Additionally, I see a lot of injured workers.
Mhm.
People have been hurt on the job, and they're dealing by the time that they get to me, they've already had their case for their physical injuries, and then over time there have been emotional things that have developed as well, and so they're referred to me. And I find that, of course, wrapped up in what they're dealing with physically, there are emotional components as well, and we work on those, and the physical will start to improve. Or maybe there's like nothing emotional that's showing up, it's just purely physical. But as we're just exploring the current stressors, let's say somebody shows up to session with a headache, and we're talking about, what's on that person's mind, then that headache starts to improve. Not always, but I have seen it plenty of times. And so those
Mhm.
are ways where, in my experience, those are ways that I've seen the body hold on to things and let the person know, hey, something here is not okay. Something here needs to be processed. And then your second question, tell me what your second
The
question
second
is
question is,
again.
and what are some signs that the past trauma is still affecting daily life?
Mm. So really anything that is out of the norm, that keeps happening. and it doesn't make sense, and it can't be attributed to a present day factor, and it's not if the person has gone to a medical professional, there's not clarity on the medical professional's part as to what is going on. We can look at that,
Mhm.
and we can again have the client just sit with curiosity and openness and be aware, be conscious of whatever that malady is, and see what comes to the forefront of the mind. And in fact, one time I heard of this really fascinating report, and it was the story that was shared was that there was this man who, in his there was a devastating experience that happened to his family, and there was a legal process connected to that. And in the legal process, he had to listen to a member of his family be accused and just taken down, taken down, taken down, and he was not allowed to testify. So it was like he was swallowing all of this garbage.
Mhm.
And he, not too long after that, developed stomach cancer. And there was no family history. And his wife, who was then relaying this story, was tying it to, now again, this is secondhand, but I find this fascinating. And I wonder if there had been the level of understanding back when this happened, the level of understanding that we now are gaining about how the body holds on to things,
Mhm.
then I wonder what kind of treatment he could have had that could potentially have saved him.
Exactly.
Also, one of my interns is has been offering a workshop about the mind-body connection that very much addresses
Mhm.
this thing, and just how the body will reveal in different ways stuff that needs to be released, understood,
Yeah.
processed, respected.
Released.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. And in my experience, men are going to process things much more physically than women.
True, and you know what's interesting is and I know so many survivors who deal with, like, stomach issues, that's a real common one, or they have an autoimmune disease, which is I know that that's also tied to, can be tied to trauma as well. For me, and you were kinda touching on it a few minutes ago, mine was physical. I've had so many tears and damage to my upper part of my body, which is interesting, and my lower back, which is interesting. And I used to joke, I don't joke about it now because it was kind of true, is that I felt like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. And so I've
Mm,
had shoulder surgeries. I've had a lot, and it's not because I'm not surgery happy at all. I didn't want any of them, but I I did enough damage that it was significantly affecting my life. But I find that really interesting, and what I remembered, and this is only probably in the last 5 years that I finally put this together, but when I was, married to my first husband, um, he would call me, and I would literally be sitting next to the phone, and I would pick it up, and he'd say, "Gosh, did you just run to the phone?" And I said, "No, why?" And he said, "You're breathing so hard. Like, you sound like you're winded, or not winded, but you're breathing hard." And he said that a few times, and I didn't understand what it was. Well, when I look back on it, I walked around so tense all the time because I was full on in survival mode. So I walked around so tense all the time, and I wasn't breathing. I was breathing very shallow. I recognize that now. And so, and then I was very active. So imagine someone who's walking around so tense all the time, and then she's constantly going to the gym. She's constantly active, constantly doing stuff. Well, of course I'm going to damage myself.
mm, yeah,
But I wholeheartedly believe in the connection.
yeah.
Unfortunately,
You've lived it, huh?
I've lived it, and I know, and I've read several books about on therapists that have talked about this, and I know that there's a way in some cases to even overcome some of this. And my husband's actually one of them that kind of did. He overcame rheumatoid arthritis. It's completely been in remission for well over 20 years.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it was so bad at one point, they were talking about you either do chemotherapy or we cut your fingers off. Like it was really bad. But it's been in
Wow.
remission for well over 20 years and he's, you know, doing fantastic. So I find it just fascinating. And I know as we're learning more and more about the effects of trauma, I mean, I think we're really kind of just scratching the surface of what we're finding out about the effects of trauma and how it affects our bodies and our mind and all the nuances with it. It's just I find it fascinating.
For sure.
Yeah, yeah. But I guess the reason why I find it fascinating is because we can now find the connection and we can overcome so much of it now. We don't have to live with that. We don't have to live with that the rest of our life.